Hey Yogi Bears, welcome to your tutorial. I've got a couple of our Sanskrit and English variation postures for you, and I just want to run through some of the basics on those. So let's get started. Our first posture that we're going to look at is Balasana, or child's pose, and there are quite a few variations of these. The first one is knees together, feet together, sitting back into the hips onto the heels, and you're just going to roll the body down so you feel that belly to spine connection and bring the forehead down to the earth. So my arms are resting by my feet here, and what that does is opens up across my shoulder blades, so I'm creating space in my shoulders here. So that's Balasana variation 1. Of course, we can do different things with the arms, and quite often we'll move through postures and variations as we move through practice. So that one actually opens up into the spine. So you can see that rounding in the spine, and that creates that extension in the back body. The second variation that I just want to show you is knees wide. So this knees wide is slightly different in its approach. There's a little bit of hip opening here, but also it becomes heart opening because we're no longer resting the body over the top of the legs, but we're bringing the body in between the legs here, and see what happens with my back. You've got no choice but to reach the arms forward, and now I'm in more of a heart opening and a slight back bend, and I'm allowing for that hip opening as well through this space. Still feels good. So those are the two different variations that we will use during our practice of Balasana. We might sometimes do some side opening as well through there, but knees together is opening up through the back body, and knees apart, hips opening, and you've got that slight back bend as we open the heart space. So that is your Balasana. Next posture is Sukhasana, so easy seated pose. We practice this all the time. We do this all the time. I don't mind if in your Sukhasana you use a block or a book, or my trick of wrapping a brick in a tea towel. If you're going to use the block in your Sukhasana, I'm just going to turn a little bit more side on here so that you can see that. I like to have the hips over my knees. So in order to do that, and I know I've got a little bit of a rounded booty there, I don't want you to sit with the sit bones all the way back here on the block, right? What I want you to do is sit slightly forward of it so that you're almost like your sit bones are right on this edge of the block, and take your Sukhasana from here. And that's going to allow the knees to drop down to the earth, and what happens is you get a little bit more length in the spine here. And if this, this can be particularly useful for people during, and I'll show you some adjustments as we move on through Paschimottanasana and some of the other forward folds or seated forward folds that we do. So this posture here, Sukhasana, easy seated pose, I like to use this variation for my, it's a rather persistent fly. I like to use this variation for my meditation purposes as well, because I do feel that elevation gives me that lengthening in the spine and just allows me to sit a little bit longer. So you will see, or you can work into the space. You might already have it whether you're seated on the floor. Padmasana, which is lotus pose. I can work into full lotus, but it depends how I feel on any given day. Hip opening is a constant work in progress for me, so sometimes I like to use half Padmasana in this space for meditation as well. So Sukhasana, Padmasana, half Padmasana, full lotus, half lotus, wherever your lotus might lead you is right there. So let's move on a little bit. We're going to come to some of our standing poses now. So up we come. And we're going to talk all things Tadasana. So Tadasana, or mountain pose, Samasthiti, as it might sometimes be referred to if you're watching other yoga tutorials, is the standing pose, and it's the beginning for our vinyasa. So as we move through our Surya Namaskar A and B, and in between all of our balancing postures, this Tadasana is the grounding and base posture for everything that we do in yoga. So in order to come into this posture, I like to lift my toes, and that creates Padabandha, which is a foot lock. I then separate my toes, bringing all 10 toes down to the mat. And this is something that you can play with. This lift of the toes, and then I draw the baby toe down, the next one, until I get to the big toe. Then I look down and I go, oh, one toe is a little bit more spacious than the other. But what that does is helps create more space for the foot, so that you're actually covering more of the earth with the foot, which means essentially you've got more to balance on because more of the foot is connected to the earth. That's the general idea. So feet are together. The energy is drawing up through the legs. So you can feel the energy, and I guess we talk about this, the subtle energy of the body, or the subtle body. Lifting the shins, and you can physically feel that sensation of lifting the kneecaps up. You can feel the sensation of drawing the energy up through the quadriceps in the front of the leg. Lots of teachers will tell you to tilt the pelvis or tuck the tailbone. I'm not a massive fan of that particular instruction. I like to think of shortening the distance between the ribs and the hips, because that switches on my core. I'm going to knit these floating ribs together, and I want to have the sensation of the whole pelvis drawing down towards the earth. So as I think of the pelvis drawing down towards the earth, what happens is I get a natural posterior tilt of the pelvis. So anterior tilt of the pelvis, posterior tilt of the pelvis. This is the tucking of the pelvis. So you can, if I just hold my hands up here, you can see I've tucked my pelvis versus core activation and drawing of the pelvis down towards the earth. So tucking of the pelvis, which ends up in this kind of squeezing action, versus grounding down, activating the core and drawing the hips or the pelvic girdle down towards the earth. So in my experience, my personal practice, that's where I feel the difference is, and so that's why I share that with you. Grounding down, lifting up through the legs. We've talked about the hips, we've talked about switching on the core. We've talked about knitting these floating ribs together. A little lift of the heart space, and that does sound quite contradictory to shortening the distance between the ribs and the hips, but what we're thinking about is in our subtle body, all of those little separate things. And you are never in complete stillness. There is always recalibration going on. So you might knit the ribs, shorten the distance, lift the heart. Knit the ribs, shorten the distance, lift the heart space. The hands are energized towards the earth. So you have this sensation of the arms heavy and drawing you back down towards the earth. The cervical spine or the neck is lengthening. There's a gentle tuck of the chin to the chest here that creates a little bit more length through the back of the neck. And the crown of the head, your crown chakra, your 1,000-petal lotus, is drawing towards the sky. So ultimately, if you stand in this posture for any length of time and engage all of those practices, I'm guaranteeing you that you will break a sweat. So that is your Tadasana. Next posture is Uttanasana, so our deep forward fold. We do go through this in our sun salutations, but I'll do a little bit of a demonstration for you here, because quite often we will do some more intense stretching in this Uttanasana shape. So Uttanasana is your deep forward fold, and you can inhale and bring the hands to heart center until you can do extended arm variations of this. But the basic practice is that we want to lengthen through the back of the legs. So in order to do that, I'm going to engage the belly, and I'm going to send my butt towards the back of the mat, almost like I want to do a little baby back bend here. When I reach as far forward as I can go, my hands come down to the mat. Now, I'm pretty flexible in this space, so I don't expect everyone to be like this. So when you get to whatever that place might be for you, bend into the knees until you can reach the earth. Drop the head down and then start to work on straightening the legs. The weight rocks forward slightly into the balls of the feet here, and you use these little guys, your 10 toes, as kind of stoppers. And they stop you from rocking forward. And this might take a while to get the hang of, and finding that each individual toe can work with you instead of against you. So a gentle roll forward into the toes, drop the head down. As I come into this space, I'm going to start sending my hips up towards the sky, and you can see that rocking forward enables me to do that. My crown of my head is drawing towards the earth here. And my hands are actually planted by the side of my feet. So eventually when you get into the full expression of this posture, my body weight actually is on the balls of my feet, but I can still lift my toes. But in order to stop me falling forward, I engage the toes and I can lift a little bit further into the hips. My belly, interestingly enough, is engaged. So that sensation of shortening the distance between the ribs and the hips is giving me length in my lumbar spine, in my back body here. And that's an important part of this posture too. It's going to lengthen through the whole back body, so the whole spine, and enable you to get your head eventually down here. So that is your Uttanasana, deep forward fold. The next posture is Utkatasana, and I know those guys sound so similar. Uttanasana, Utkatasana. Utkatasana is chair pose. Every yogi's favourite pose. So, chair pose, sweep the hands down by the floor, leave the hips down as though you're sitting into a chair. Belly draws into the spine, so you can see that action. And I'm just going to turn a little bit more side on for you. As I drop down here, and I'm just going to take the hands forward in this demonstration. So you can see I've got a bend in the back, and as I say, shorten the distance to the ribs and the hips. My belly draws back, I'm able to sit back a little bit further, and I've created a little more length in my spine. So that's my chair pose, and I can go a little bit lower here, and I can build a little bit more strength in my legs. I've lifted my toes, I can still swing my toes over the top of my knees, and then I can lift my hands a little bit further. Belly to spine, sit back. So that, my friends, is Utkatasana. And I know it seems like a really big ask, but eventually, it's just like every other posture. The ones that we hate the most are obviously the ones that we need to do. And, I certainly couldn't get that chair pose as deep as I can get it when I first started. So it's just a question of coming back to it, engaging in it, because that posture does build tapas and it builds strength in the legs, so that when you come into some of your balancing postures, Virabhadrasana and the likes, you'll be able to get in there with strength and commitment to each of those poses. So we have looked at Chaturanga Dandasana, so four-limbed staff pose, which is here. We call it plank pose, four-limbed staff pose, plank pose. Lowering down all the way onto the floor. So I've given you the video tutorial for Chaturanga Dandasana. So if we come down all the way onto the floor, we're going to look at Bhujangasana, which is Cobra Pose. So Cobra Pose, the hands are underneath the shoulders and the elbows, just as we do in Chaturanga, they squeeze in to the ribs here. So as you inhale, you're going to peel the body up off the earth and move into this Cobra Pose. So my heart space is lifted forward and my shoulders are drawing back or down the back. So I'm depressing the shoulder blades. It's not depressing, it's actually pretty good. And I'm strengthening it into the back. And exhale, release. So both of my feet are squeezed together like I've got one long tail. And I'm pressing those guys into the earth. And my legs are lengthened here, so don't let them go all like flippy floppy. The legs are lengthened, but I'm not doing massive glute engagement, because the minute I start to engage my glutes, all the work is being done here instead of being done in the lumbar spine or in the back body. So what I want to do is kind of, even though my legs are zipped up tight, the flats of my feet are face down, hands are underneath the shoulders, the legs are engaged, but I've kind of released the glutes a little bit. I'm going to inhale, peel the body up, and I'm going to create that strength in the back. And you can lift a little bit higher as you move through each of these different phases and you warm up into the back body, creating strength and opening in the spine. So the next one from here is Urdhva Mukha. And we usually come into Urdhva Mukha from and through our Chaturanga or our Vinyasa. So Urdhva Mukha, I'm going to move to it from plank pose, and I'm just going to shift forward. I'm over on my toes and I've lifted up into my Urdhva Mukha. So my hands, palms are planted into the earth, arms are straight, Flat to the front of the feet into the earth. My knees are lifted, my quadriceps are lifted, my hips are drawing down slightly so I feel that opening and my ribs are telescoping away from my hips. My heart is reaching forward. Eventually the gaze goes up to the sky. Knees come down and I come out. And that is your Urdhva Mukha, so upward facing dog. From your upward facing dog, the natural progression is that we come into downward facing dog, yoga's most famous posture. So just as we do in our Chaturanga Dandasana, our hands are like starfish and the hands palms are going to press into the earth. So they're just outside of the shoulders. And again, feel free to make those marks on your mat with sticky tape or a pen, masking tape, whatever is going to work for you. Or if you have a patterned mat, just go, I know where my finger placement is. And you can recognize, like on here, I've got these little, this mandala here, and so I can find my space within there every single time without fail. But you will get used to where the body needs to go if you repeat the process over and over. I'm going to tuck my toes here and lift my hips. So downward facing dog. Look, eventually the downward facing dog pose, you should be able to come back to plank directly for your chaturanga from wherever your foot placement is. However, I recognise that that's not always possible for everyone in their first. It can take quite a bit of time to get to that space, build that strength and find the length in the body. So step the feet just a little bit closer. Press the hands palms into the earth. Try not to let any space underneath the hands. Press the mat away, like you're like, I don't like your mat. Press it away. Drop the head down. And you want to feel that energetic lift away from the mat. So even though there's a connection of the hands, the energetic lift is away from the mat. So the shoulders are drawing down and back. So you can see I'm moving in that space and I'm pressing away and lifting up and out of the shoulders. My neck stays long, but there's no tension in the neck. From here, I want to lift the belly towards the spine and my gaze goes directly back through my legs here, or eventually towards the belly button. I can't see my belly button and it feels really weird, like I've got a chin lock. Or a throat lock. So I use the gaze, I actually gaze between my thighs here, and that tells me that my head is completely relaxed when I'm in this space. But you know, it might take a while to get there. Hands, palms press, belly towards the spine, relax the neck. So in this space, my heels touch the earth, so I like to lift my toes up off the earth. And I think about pressing all four corners of my feet into the mat. Now, if your feet don't reach the mat, bend into the knees and have the heels lifted. Still press away so that you feel that lengthening of the back body. And send your hips towards the sky. So it's almost like they're going to the back corner of the room. And if you keep pressing, it's almost like the belly wants to come down to the thighs. And from here, you can start to work the heels down. And that will take a matter of time, but this downward facing dog is going to help so many different aspects of your practice. It's not funny, and you don't even realize how important this posture is to the rest of your yoga practice. If there's just one thing that you get in your yoga practice, if you get this, then you know, like so many other things will open up for you and become easier parts of your practice. So belly to spine. Knit the floating ribs together, heels down towards the mat and lengthening through the back body. Drop the head and you can play in that space. So they are a few instructions on downward facing dog. I could overload you with 1,000 other corrections, but I'm not going to do that. And sometimes you might hear me through our practice, you know, maybe give you a cue to move the hips in a certain direction, and you're not going to hear all the cues all the time, and that's perfectly okay. It's wherever we get to on the day. I remember one time I was given a cue for something and I was like, man, how many years have I been practicing and how many times has a teacher said that to me and I've never heard it? And the minute I actually heard the cue, it changed that particular posture for me. But up until that point, I just wasn't ready to hear it. So There are cues and there are words. And a lot of the things are words until we're actually ready to hear the cue. And that's when that cue is super important to us, because we're physically and mentally ready to hear it. So fear not, my friends, it's a work in progress, right? Okay, so we're going to come into warrior 1, 2, 3 and reverse warrior now. So usually to get into our warriors, we move to that from our downward facing dog. So luckily that was the last posture that we did, so we're all familiar here. Move that block out of the way. So most of the time you will hear me say, inhale, lift the right leg high. Exhale, step the right foot next to the right hand. So I'm coming in to my warrior 1. Dial the left heel down. So that whole left foot is down into the mat. My body weight, I've still got that kind of doming or that protraction of the shoulder blades happening in the upper body here. And my front foot is close to my right hand. So my right hand is close to my front foot. What you want, and I'm going to move that foot just slightly, is to feel like you're standing on train tracks. So in preference to walking on a tightrope in your warrior 1, feel like you're on train tracks. So the feet are in line with the hips. And that's just going to give you the opportunity to come a little bit lower into that pose. So during the course of this demonstration, I'm going to keep for warrior 1, my hands on my hips, because the hips are going to be square to the front of the mat, and you can keep working on that rotation there, driving the outside knife edge foot of this left foot into the back, or the knife edge of that back foot into the mat, and you're going to continue to bend into this front knee. So you've got external rotation here of this leg. Both hips are forward, and that's probably the adjustment that you're going to find yourself making the most in this space. Belly to spine, lift the heart space. And eventually you're going to take the arms up over the head, and that will be your warrior 1. So coming into warrior 2, a little adjustment here, going to lift up and open. And you can see that my feet moved during that process. So from our warrior 1, which is where we're on train tracks, warrior 2, we're like that with the feet. So you might be able to see that. So this is my back foot and this is my front foot. And what I do is I separate them in that direction. So if you're ballet, it's like you've gone third position in ballet and you step forward, and that's your warrior 2 space. And you've got probably about 3 or 4 feet between the feet here. Belly to spine, shorten the distance between the ribs and hips, knit the floating ribs together, bend into that front right knee. Ultimately the goal is to get this down to a right angle, and so this is where Utkatasana chair pose comes in, building that strength to find that space. Arms are lengthened and your gaze is over that front right hand. External rotation of the thigh here, or the femur rather. This knee is tracking over the toe, and you have opening happening here, so external rotation happening in this back leg as well. Energetically, the foot is, you can feel the knife edge of that foot is what's going to stop you, and you can feel the energy coming up through here, activating the adductors on the inside of the thigh, and that's where you get and build that stability from. So if you're sliding in your warrior 2, think about that knife edge of the foot and lifting up and finding strength in the adductors, so you're actually drawing the energy up, and you could say that you're actually lifting into the Muladhara chakra and lifting the perineum if you want to get super technical here and talk about mudras. Gaze towards enlightenment over that front right hand. Okay, and that's your warrior 2. So I'm going to come to reverse warrior from here, and then we'll come back to warrior 3. Reverse warrior, Viparita Virabhadrasana, such a beautiful name. Flip the front palm, we're going to reach a little bit forward, and we're going to come up and over. So this is our reverse warrior. So reverse warrior is a lateral side bend. I see lots of people taking a back bend here. It's actually a lateral side bend. So we keep the bend in this front knee and we reach up and over. What we want to do is keep creating space and length in the side body here, or the reverse side, and we're obviously feeling that stretch all the way from the fingertips, but you should feel it from the elbow into the hip there, so you feel that lengthening. And you keep that front knee bent so you're not escaping from this pose. Hand at the back here, either on that shin, on the thigh, or you can even take a bind in this space. And what that bind does is helps, you can use that to help that external rotation of the thigh. Again, all the same activities that are happening in your warrior two, the grounding down energetically and the lifting up of the inside of the thighs, the knife edge of that back foot, all apply in this space for your warrior two. Coming into warrior three. So if I move back, and I'll move back gracefully from my warrior two, I'm going to inhale and lift, shift my feet around slightly and find my warrior one. So coming into reverse into warrior three, Virabhadrasana 3 or Virabhadrasana C. I'm going to come into crescent lunge. So the difference between warrior one and crescent lunge, warrior one, crescent lunge. Both hips are facing forward, back heel lifted. Warrior one, heel dialed down, crescent lunge, heel lifted. So if we're doing something through our vinyasa, and I do warrior one, if you're not comfortable or you're not feeling it that day, use crescent lunge as your alternative. If we're coming into our warrior three pose, we're certainly going to come from crescent lunge. So, warrior three, lifting up onto that front supporting leg and creating a capital T with the body. I'm lifting and locking up through this supporting leg, which is going to help me fall over right now. Drag it back, cat, drag it back. Okay. My toes are spread, my heel, my feet are grounded into the mat. I'm focused on one point of contact or one drishti point in front of me. My left hip turns down towards the mat. My crown of my head reaches away and my toe reaches to the back of the room. We try and create a length of capital T here. Draw belly towards the spine and lengthen through the back body. And that's your warrior three. And if you stay in warrior three, I really need to switch over to the other side because I actually will switch over to the side because that has some serious yoga butt impact here. So as you start to work into that space, the lengthening through the crown of the head, drawing forward, belly to spine, the hips are square, my toes reaching to the back of the room, my hands are at heart center. Quite often we use this to increase our cardiovascular capacity. We might use side arms or bring it back to Anjali Mudra from here. And you will notice that I use quite a few transitions in this space to move us about the mat in and out of a various number of different poses. So next on the hit list is Trikonasana or triangle pose. I just want you to keep in mind that as we move through the practice, there's actually unlimited variations of poses. So even as I teach or as I share practice with you, I'm going to give you different variations. Like some days we might reach for the earth, some days we might not touch the earth, some days we might have arms out to the side. Just be open to the different possibilities. Don't come with a beginner mind is what we say in our yoga practice. So if you are practicing and you go, oh, I don't like that version of triangle, it's not how I learned it, it's not the proper way. Well, I say to you, chill out, because there are unlimited versions of every posture. Everybody's body is different and everyone's unique in their delivery of their sharing of yoga and of their experience, and everyone's always only teaching and sharing from their truth. If you think that everyone's operating from a place of kindness and that they genuinely have a desire to share that practice with you, be open to that sharing is all that I ask. And I guess that's how I go into other people's classes when, I'm a student of this practice of yoga, this art of yoga, as much as anyone else is. And I love it when I go in and I hear different teachers teach me something, or I learn something that I didn't know before. I used to not have that mindset, and I used to go in and go, oh, that's not how I've learned to do it, that's not how this is. But I've since learned that there is no dogmatic approach to yoga. There is no one size fits all. And that's why I really advocate for each and every one of us being yogi explorers in this practice. Exploring your own body, exploring your own postures, finding out what works for you. If there's something that super works on one day, go with that. And if you learn something else and you can integrate that into your postures and your shapes, then on the next day, then go with that. But it's all just a work in progress, my friends, all just a work in progress. Trikonasana, here we go. So, Most of the time you will move to Trikonasana from that downward dog shape, and usually through a sequence that will bring you through Warrior 1 or 2. I'm going to move directly into Trikonasana from Warrior 1 here. So we're going to lift that right leg, and I'm going to bring the right foot to the right hand. I'm going to dial my left foot down, so I am in my Warrior 1, and I'm going to inhale up and come to Trikonasana from here. So my Warrior 1 is here, but my Trikonasana, as I open up, I find myself in Warrior 2 with straight legs. What I want you to do is adjust your front foot. Don't put this foot so far back here that you're almost like you're en route to splits. Because what's going to happen is you're just going to crunch down into this side here, and it's not the effect of what we're trying to, it's not the objective of this particular posture. So bring that back foot in and make it that you're about 2 or 3, maybe 3 feet in distance between the feet here. Extend the arms, draw belly to spine and lift the heart space, gazing off into enlightenment over that front right hand. So I've lifted up through the legs here. Both of my feet are grounded and connected to the earth. Knife edge of the foot down into the mat here. So that knife edge is like, see, you can see my back foot like rolling to the knife edge. Rolling with mommies, rolling onto the knife edge. So lifting up through the inside of the legs, so creating that strength. And it's almost, this is where we say, you'll hear some teachers say spiraling. And the spiraling is that effect of lifting up and rotating through the feet. So that action there where I feel the knife edge of my feet lifting, and then I feel that lift up through my legs, and ultimately the engagement into the adductors, which leads to the opening of the hip space, the drawing down of the pelvis as I lessen the space between the ribs and the hips there, engaging the deep abdominals, gazing over that front right hand. So to get into Trikonasana, I get my Saturday night disco hips on because I want to send that left hip or the back hip to the back of the mat. And I want to reach as far forward, gazing off into the distance, reaching those fingertips of the right hand as far as I can. As I exhale, I'm going to place this hand on my shin. The reason I do this in my introduction into my personal practice in Trikonasana is that as I apply a little bit of pressure to the shin, you can see what happens under here. I start to lengthen through that space. This space here is already lengthened, and then I get my reach up, and I've created all of the triangles that I need to create in this space. The last and final point is to gaze towards the top left hand. So what am I doing here? What am I doing here? So I've got the lengthening underneath here, I've created a triangle. I'm lifting up and out of these hips, and I've got external rotation of this right femur. I've got external rotation of the left femur. I'm drawing belly into spine, so I've engaged my core, and you can see and feel that this will start to open up into the side body and into the back body, into the hips, and it will create strength. And if you stay in this posture and I give you some arm variations, guaranteed you'll break a sweat, and anyone that says yoga is not hard hasn't spent long enough in Trikonasana. Rant over. So arm reaching high. The next aspect of this pose is that we want to start to create a little twist. So it's as though this underneath section that we've been lengthening starts to lift, and the heart space is going to turn and open towards the sky. So you've got all these like things that seem counterintuitive, pesky fly, counterintuitive in this space, which is like, oh, I don't think I should be doing that, but oh, it actually feels quite good. So as you work into the space, you think, oh, okay, maybe, yes, I can deepen that twist if I draw my belly into the spine and lengthen the crown of the head away from the hips, and I can go a little bit deeper. So you want to feel more of a stretch down the side body? Reach that arm all the way over the top of the head and feel that stretch. Want to create some strength in this pose? Lift that bottom arm off, and we will do this in practice. Want to go a little bit deeper into the hips? Press that hand into the earth and lift up here. Want to create a little bit more strength and find that balance? In your Ashtanga version, we reach for the big toe and we pull back. and that is your Trikonasana. So that was about 5 different variations there. Next one, revolved Trikonasana. Totally different structure to where we are right now. We're going to step that back foot a little bit closer in here. So you've only got probably about maybe 2.5 foot here. We're actually going to close the hips. So this is our open hip posture. We're going to turn that back foot and adjust the feet, and we come into this closed hip position. So I'm just going to get this little guy for my demonstration purposes. So we're in that closed hip position. We've come from Trikonasana, open, to revolved Trikonasana, which is closed hips. So front leg, toes face directly forward. Back foot is like a warrior 1 foot. So 45-degree angle, knee tracking over the toe, hips square. So if you're uncertain, get yourself in front of a mirror and you might want to go, oh, how's this working for me? How's this feeling? Okay, I can feel that adjustment. I can feel that my hips are square now. And you'll be able to see it in the mirror, but you actually want them parallel to the front of your mat. Right. Inhale, lift the left arm high, and this right hand is on my hip, in my hip crease here. Beep, beep, hip crease. Inhale and lift the heart space. As you exhale, reach as far off in the distance forward as you possibly can. So we're really lengthening through the body. Both feet are planted firmly on the floor. I'm lifting up through my legs here, and I've engaged my belly. And that engagement of the belly is allowing some more length into the back body. Eventually, as I start to say this often enough, draw the ribs towards the spine, draw ribs towards the hips. You will feel the difference in your lumbar spine. From here, port of call number 1, hand comes down to the earth on the inside of the foot. If this is a monster challenge still, use your block. Use a lunchbox, use whatever you got. Inhale and lift that right arm high. We want to keep the hips square. So if you want to move on from there, so this is port of call number 1 or with a block. Port of call number 2, block goes on the outside of the foot, hand presses into the block, and you lift. So if that's too low, feel free to play in the space, create that, explore the posture. So I actually don't use block in this space, so I'm all the way down on the earth, and I'm lifting here. Both feet are pressing into the earth, and I'm feeling and deepening that twist, belly to spine. Eventually, I gaze up to that top right hand. Exhale, hand comes back down onto the waist. Inhale, all the way back up to standing, and then you actually repeat that on the other side, and it's super duper fun. So that's your Trikonasana and revolved triangle. I've demonstrated on one side today, just in the order to make this video a little bit quicker, I guess, because we could be here all day going through these instructions, but do both sides, don't just do your favourite side. And that be the truth, do both sides, or I will come and find you and I will make you do the other side that you don't like so much. Okay, so our next one is Prasarita Padahasana. So this is our wide leg forward fold. Usually we come into this from a part of our warrior sequence. So when we're in downward facing dog, we'll inhale right leg high, step right foot to right hand, inhale, come all the way up to warrior 2, straighten through the front right leg, turn the right toes and turn the left toes in so that the toes are actually angled in. So you have this, you're internally rotating the femur. Normally we work with external rotation, and we do that a lot. External rotation, the feet are facing out. Internal rotation, whoop, I've just turned the toes in, so naturally my femurs have rotated in. So that's where we are here. Inhale and lift the heart space. Bring the hands onto the hips. Now, as we move into this space, because we're going to fold forward towards the floor, in order to create length in the body, I'm going to start by taking an inhale breath and lifting my heart space and gazing towards the sky. As I go to exhale, I'm lengthening through my back. I'm going to keep my eyesight gazed forward as far forward as I can. And I'm not going to let go of the horizon. I'm not going to let go of the horizon until I absolutely have to, and I've come down to the earth. The hands can come down into the earth. Eventually the head will come down on the earth. So we'll work with a whole lot of different hand placements in this posture. So one of them might be hands directly underneath the waist and use the abdominals to pull you down. We might do another variation where we have the hands underneath and we use the bicep and tricep strength to pull us down. We have another variation where we have the arms coming up over the head, and that will be a majority of the arm variations there. We might also do some things while we're down here, which is some twists where we try and keep the hips square and open up by twisting through the thoracic spine here. Swap hands over, twisting and opening through that spine. We might also do some strength work in this place. Right arm lift, left arm lift. Exhale, hands to heart center. Inhale, lift all the way up. Exhale, breath. Deep forward fold. So our last one is Utthita Parsvakonasana, which is wide side angle pose. This comes from our warrior two, and I'm going to go in the other direction because I've done lots of stuff in that direction right now. So I'm in my warrior two space here. What you might find is that you need a little more space here. I do, so I adjust my back foot because I want to come deeper into this pose. I want to come down. I'm going to be a yogi explorer. I'm going to find my way in to this 90-degree angle here. The back knife edge of my foot. I've got that spiraling happening. I'm lifting up through that back leg. External rotation of the back leg. External rotation of the front leg. Belly to spine, and I'm gazing off into, now this looks like warrior two right now. I'm going to change this posture so that it becomes Utthita Parsvakonasana. And I'm going to change it by putting my elbow into my quadricep, and I'm going to use that for additional external rotation. And I'm going to inhale and reach this right hand up all the way over the top, fingertips down to the knife edge. I've created one long line from the top of these fingertips all the way down to the knife edge of the foot. Now, if you've done Bikram yoga, they call this, they actually call this triangle pose in Bikram yoga. It comes from the Ashtanga Vinyasa. It's in the Hatha practice. Bikram never owned it. He just called it something different. We call it wide side angle pose. Belly into the spine, lengthening through the back body, drawing down into the hips, external rotation of both legs. So if we want to move a little deeper into this pose, the next port of call is the hand coming down to the earth. Again, feel free to use a block under this hand. If you want to go a little bit deeper, you might be in the back here on the fingertips and still exploring that space. Draw the elbow back towards the ear and open the heart towards the sky, still reaching fingertip to fingertip. Eventually you're going to inhale, come back out, and do that on the other side. So, that's most of the basic postures that I've covered there. Look, I think I've mentioned before that, there's limitless possibilities when it comes to asana. And that was probably 10 or 12 postures there out of, potentially thousands and thousands. So just giving you some of the basics so that as you go to work through and start creating your own home practice, you go, oh, I remember this or I remember that. And these are some of the cues or instructions for that pose. Or as you move through a flow with another teacher, another inspired yogi, you hear them say warrior two, warrior three. You have a familiarity, and then listen to their cues and see how you can adjust and move in with their practice and how that impacts your body and what you learn from that. And we'll do hundreds of other asana as we move through our yoga practice. So I look forward to seeing you on our next tutorial. After this particular video, I have actually included 3 or 4 extra tutorials, one on tree pose, one on side plank, one on wild thing. So if you want to make that part of your practice, that wild thing does have a couple of different variations and modifications, so it's accessible for everybody. And If there's a particular asana that you would like to learn that I haven't included in this tutorial, please feel free to pop a little message into the Facebook group and I will get back to that message and I will respond with a tutorial on that particular posture, and I'm always happy to do that. So ask away, just pop those questions into the Facebook group and let's share the love with our little yogi community. I will see you on the next tutorial. Much love.